Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles.
Chase Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome back into Operation Domination, the special injury episode that we'll be bringing to you every single week. Just FYI, we record this on Thursday night, so that way you have it early Friday morning. So if we're not updated with the Friday reports, that is why. But I do bring on the expert, Mr. Dr. Brian Scott, man.
I just got an email from SeatGeek saying that they've authenticated Carolina Panthers tickets, people, for the season. I don't know if we should be excited or what, but
They just now authenticated it?
I'm like, okay.
Okay.
What they do?
Please come to our games.
Yeah, like they're really reaching now. So, but thanks for having me on, Dan. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for bringing that up, guys. This is Thursday night. We're doing this right before the start of the game. We will be as accurate as we can be, given all the reports. I get all my stuff for this show, and all the shows I do, which I do multiple shows, by the way, since we might have a lot of new viewers this year, Dan, which is great.
That is the idea.
Well-deserved, by the way, well-deserved.
Thank you.
Most of the stuff I get is what you read in reports, what you get from your sources on the internet, social media, and whatnot. I'm not getting any inside information, but where I separate myself from everybody else is I've got the experience in the background to know how to decipher all these reports and stuff. So it's going to be about as accurate as it can be without actually being there in the sideline. And trust me, when you hear sources, it ain't coming from the medical professionals. It's coming from like the custodians and the locker room attendants and maybe some interns who are just happen to be present and, want to butter up to some of these reporters and stuff and someday maybe work with them. So they're going to tell them what they saw, but you're not going to get much as far as detail goes until the medical people start talking, and that doesn't usually happen very often. But that's why you come here to watch the show. Follow me, Dan, and we'll make sure you get all the latest, up-to-date, most accurate injury updates.
Yeah, of course, and I'm here to give the fantasy football impact of all the injury analysis that Brian has to give. By the way, make sure you're checking out Dr. Brian Scott on the Injured List podcast throughout the year, because you cover all the sports. So happy to have you on and happy to do this with you and happy to have people go your direction. All right, so let's dive into this thing because I know it's week one. The good news is because it's week one, there are no bye weeks. So you should still have options. And if you drafted somebody who is injured, likely you already knew about their injury and had a backup plan. Or at least I'm hoping so if you were watching and listening to this show. Otherwise, I haven't been doing my job. So don't tell me I haven't been doing my job. But first and foremost, let's just do this because this one literally dropped right before the show. So we're just going to head and knock this out the way because I think it's going to be number one name on everyone's mind going into the Friday practice reports. Yeah. Christian McCaffrey popped up with a limited participant in practice with a calf issue. Now, everyone, of course, their butts got real tight on that, right? Because it's like, oh, man, this is going to be the same thing as last year. It's all deja vu all over again. And I will say from one standpoint, it's a little concerning because he wasn't listed with that calf issue at all this training camp, but they have been rotating him in his Thursday. So, Brian, what do you make of this?
First of all, these reports literally just popped up as we were talking in the green room there. And from what we were able to decipher, going back and forth together, looking at various social media posts and looking on the internet, it sounds like this was just a precautionary thing due to some calf soreness that he experienced in practice following yesterday's full session, which he participated in. So it wasn't like he got hurt, had to get carted off the field or anything serious like that. Heading into week one, he hasn't had any setbacks this preseason. It sounds like things are good. They're going to be very cautious with him, given all the stuff that happened last year in the preseason heading into the opening week one. And I don't expect him to take any chances with his health this year because, let's face it, the guy's had major injuries over the last few years. He's lost some time due to injuries. He's getting older. He's a running back. Time is already short as it is at that position for most NFL players. They're going to want him when he's out there to be prime, tip-top, 100% ready to go. So I'm not overly concerned about it. I don't think fans and people who have him on their fantasy roster should be overly concerned about it. It sounds like it was just a precautionary thing, and that makes sense from a sports medicine healthcare perspective. There's no reason to push a guy through some unexpected or new onset soreness in a body part that he previously dealt with injuries on at this stage of the preseason as you head into week 1. Because if you try to push somebody through that or you ignore that, that's when things linger. That's when they potentially become more serious down the line. And that's when you end up on IR or season-ending injuries. So smart move by the medical team, smart move by the organization. I'm not worried. I don't think anybody else should be.
Yeah, and just a reminder, this is not like last year. Last year, he was listed with the calf injury, was not practicing throughout training camp. We kept being told he's going to come back, and then it didn't happen. All the accounts are McCaffrey has looked like his old form self throughout the entire summer. So again, do not panic on this. The fantasy impact would be if something were to pop up. Well, we all know Brian Robinson, the newly acquisite, trade asset that they got from the Washington Commanders over there with the 49ers. He would definitely be the primary backup, with Garendo likely being a complement from a lightning standpoint, more of a speed standpoint. But they brought in Brian Robinson because they wanted someone to be that number 2. It looks like they did not trust Garendo to take on a full workload as the backup running back to Christian McCaffrey, but he is a playmaker. But Robinson would be the guy to play if you have him. Okay, so let's go to Devon Achane, because this is somebody we actually did have on our list. And while we're at it, who was supposed to be his backup originally, Jalen Wright, dealing with a lower leg issue too.
Yeah, so the whole Jalen Wright thing is a bit of a mystery. Multiple reports have said he had a small or minor procedure done on his leg. I don't know what that means. I have not found any specific detail that goes into what exactly that procedure was. However, Coach McDaniel characterized his return as sometime in the foreseeable future and likely going to miss several weeks. He's not going to be available for week 1. I think that's been confirmed. My guess is if it was a quote unquote minor procedure, then what they're probably waiting for is to make sure that whatever they did, if it required some type of surgical incision, that heals adequately. And in that case, there may not be anything structural that was needed to be done during this minor procedure. And so they're just letting things heal in a timely fashion so that there's no risk of a wound dehiscence or some type of complication. So I'm going to guess that he's out at least 2 weeks minimum. That could be pushed up by a few days here and there, depending on the timing of the procedure. But definitely this week, we'll have to see what happens during practice next week. But very limited information coming out about what that procedure was. Now, Devon Achane, on the flip side, has actually practiced in full today, is expected to play Sunday against the Colts, and McDaniel was clear in saying that he's very optimistic that he's going to be ready to go at a very high level, and that this was a minor setback, and they wanted to make sure he was going to be ready to go, knowing that Jalen Wright was having this procedure. So it sounds like everything went smooth with his therapy. They were being very aggressive in his rehab leading up to week 1, so it sounds like he's ready to go.
All right. Well, that's the good news, right? If you drafted Devon Achane, you're going to be able to use him week 1. And that's what we were hoping for. And that's what we were told the entire time, although we can't always trust the coaching staffs. I understand that. If you drafted Devon Achane and you knew about this calf issue, you knew you were probably going to want to handcuff him, plus him being a smaller back, plus Miami's offensive line sucking, all those factors is why you probably should have handcuffed him if you're going to draft him anyway. Now, the thing was that if you're drafting in early August, you were drafting Jalen Wright to handcuff him. Maybe you got lucky enough and still got your hands on Ollie Gordon. Hopefully you did. That would be the number 2. Now, to go further in depth on that for a split second, we don't know exactly the right timeline. The last thing I saw was that sometime late September was seemed to be the targeted date for him to come on back. Regardless, Wright was not looking very good in preseason, in training camp. There was a lot of notes about that. Now, I'm not the biggest Ollie Gordon guy. I think he's the definition of just a dude who can do a little bit of everything, which makes him a quality backup, but not somebody who can actually explode and make plays the way Jalen Wright physical skill set is, but we haven't really seen him be able to put that together. And from what I understood, it wasn't coming together all that much in training camp either, and then got shut down short with the injury that he had, and he's missed the last few weeks of it anyway. So all that is to say, there's a real chance that regardless of Jalen Wright coming back from this injury, Ollie Gordon might be the handcuff for Devon Achane for the rest of the season moving forward anyway. So you should have him on your roster ready to go, and we'll tackle that when Wright comes back to see exactly how that all shakes out in the depth chart. Let's talk about the game it's going to be tonight, if you're listening to this on Friday like you should be. Najee Harris, eye injury, says he's going to play. Brian, I got to ask you, though, because we talked about this before training camp, and we talked about it then, and you didn't have much concern. But then it took all of training camp for him to get back. Like his first practices was week 1 of practice. So what do you make of that timeline there?
Again, this has been very limited information. They called it, I think they called it a superficial eye injury or something to that effect, which in theory shouldn't really preclude him from being on the field, maybe avoiding contact, but like at least doing something out there. I'm not sure what to make. This was a firework incident, by the way, in the offseason, reminiscent of a New York Giant who we won't talk about. But, I don't know, man. It's hard to say exactly what it was. It didn't require surgery. It wasn't anything serious, but yet he wasn't on the field until recently, like you said. So I'm guessing it was just a superficial corneal abrasion or something to that effect that just needed some time to heal, and they were being cautious. I'm sure that if he does come back, he's going to be playing with a visor or some form of eye protection if he didn't before. But yeah, kind of a mystery as to why it took so long to get him back on the field if this was nothing serious. I don't really have much more to say than that. I mean, it's not an extremity injury. It's not a sports-related injury. Should not affect his conditioning and ability to perform at a high level unless he's still dealing with some type of visual disturbance, which may have been the reason why it took him so long. I don't know. They haven't said that. So my assumption is that he's good to go. He was medically cleared, according to the team, to return to practice and be ready for the game, and they're saying he's ready for week 1. So I have no reason to think otherwise based on what limited information they put out.
Yeah, it was just a very weird situation. An eye kept him out all of training camp, and an eye that we were told, to your point, wasn't supposed to be all that serious. But so here's the fantasy of it all. If you think Najee Harris is going to have a significant role week 1 after joining a new team with a new regime, not practicing at all throughout training camp, you're crazy. Like, I've heard people who own Amari and Hampton who are actually like freaking out about this. Like, first of all, if you drafted Amari and Hampton, you did so knowing that you wanted him to get the bell cow workload by the end of the season anyway, and you just got like pretty much a treat with the Najee Harris situation that week 1, you're going to see it. I know Greg Roman came out and said there's going to be a rotation. No running back gets 100% of the touches. So I don't know why. I don't know what made you think there wouldn't be another running back getting involved in some capacity anyway. But Amari Hampton is a special kind of beast who fits that system really, really well. I don't see this guy coming off the field 50% of the time. Like, this is going to be a guy who I think has a real chance for a 70+% total opportunity share out of that backfield this season. And week 1, it's a tougher match against Kansas City. I'd be more worried about that, but he's in my top 20 of running backs. You're locking him in, you're playing him. I don't expect to see much of Najee Harris in this game. All right, I wanted to get this one out the way because, I mean, we talked about this. We kind of saw it the same way, and it looks like it's going to be correct. So Joe Mixon and his foot issue back on the IR. Obviously, he's not going to play this week, but do you think he's going to play it all this season?
That's a tough call. We don't know exactly what he did either. I've guessed all along that it's possibly some type of Lisfranc injury, which is pretty serious. And if I would have to look back through my notes, but I know he's had some foot and ankle issues throughout the years in the past when he was with the Bengals. If that is in fact what he did, or if this is a re-aggravation of a previous Lisfranc injury, this is very, very bad for him and his season. And we, in our show here together, I predicted that this was going to be a long-term thing. I wouldn't even touch him in fantasy drafts. And that's about as big a fantasy analysis as you'll get from me. And so, truth, be told, line behold here, he's on IR, which is not unusual given the whole circumstance here. And this was a injury that occurred in the offseason, apparently. So whether it was during training or whatever, we don't know. He's out 4 games minimum, but then the team still has 21 days if they are going to activate him once he starts practicing. So we may not even have an answer for up to 7 weeks, possibly, as to what he's going to do, if he's going to be even available at all, and if they're even going to consider taking him off IR and activating him to the active roster. So this is going to drag out for several weeks into the season. We may not get a lot more updates or information till we get closer to that time frame. So I don't anticipate talking about him much for quite some time going forward. If you had watched our shows and listened to the reports that we gave, you would have foreseen this to come and avoided him at all cost.
I know. And we talked about this. I talked with people during the expo, and there were drafts going on during the expo. Joe Mixon in the the draft night out league that I was in went in like the 7th, 8th round. I'm like, dude, you're gonna regret that pick. Like, even if he plays at some point this season, you're gonna regret that pick.
And here's the problem: their backup who's now going to be their starter is Nick Chubb, who people are also very high on, and I know it's because he's very fantasy relevant when he is healthy. But that's the problem with Nick Chubb, is he's not often very healthy. He's coming off major knee injuries times 2. And this is another year where he's coming off a major knee injury. If you've watched me talk about Nick Chubb, I'm very, very cautious with what we can expect from him. And he's basically a ticking time bomb. His knee is a ticking time bomb. So you have to be very careful with what your expectations are of him. And now the Texans are relying on him as their number 1.
Well, and that segues perfectly into what I was about to talk about with the Texans backfield being a complete and utter mess. Look, Nick Chubb, like, even this week, it was hard for me to get Nick Chubb as a starting running back in the NFL. Javonte Williams falls into this too, to even get him to crack the top 36 in my running backs. That's how hard it was for me to even get him that high. Because that's how much I don't think you should bother playing him. Like, this whole thing, you're going to probably see Dameon Pierce more. You're going to see some sort of mixture of Dare Ogunbowale and Woody Marks. Like, and Woody Marks, the whole thing, like, everybody was like, well, maybe Woody Marks could be the guy because he's the rookie. Well, now he got pushed way down the depth chart. I talked about this on the show yesterday, and I said I think there's a non-zero chance that Woody Marks is healthy and active coming up for this weekend, depending on how the special teams are going to work with where he's placed it right now. Like, you just don't know. This whole thing is a complete mess. And when you have a guy like, Nick Chubb, who last year was 3.3 yards per carry, he wasn't that explosive. And the reports in training camp have been he hasn't looked really that explosive. He still looks like he's a step slow. I don't know what you're expecting, if anything. You're hoping he falls into the end zone. He never gave you much as a pass catcher. And if he doesn't have the explosion, which is what made him so special in the first place, I don't know what you're going to get, which is why I do think we're going to see a full-blown committee, and the Texans are just going to wait for somebody to get a hot hand to ride. And that's how this whole thing's going to play out. So I think you're going to be playing Russian roulette with that Texans backfield. All right, so let's talk about the wide receivers. Justin Jefferson, hamstring, big name there. What do you got?
Not worried. Not worried at all. He's cleared to play. He's going to play. They were just being extra cautious with him. I don't expect this to be a lingering issue. He's all-pro, all-star. I mean, you name it. The guy's their number 1 and is one of the number 1s across the league. So they're going to treat him with kid gloves. They've had enough time now in the preseason to make sure he's been right. I don't foresee it being an issue.
Yeah, and if anybody could skip training camp, it would be Justin Jefferson. The bigger concern was Jordan Addison being suspended and guys like Jalen Naylor and some others, Ty Felton, all getting banged up, which is why they made the trade for Adam Thielen. All right, Jaden Reed, Jones fracture, thinks he's going to try to play through it this season, but this doesn't make me feel pretty good.
Yeah, kind of surprising. I'm sure this is not what was recommended to him. I can almost guarantee you that when he saw the team doctor, they were pushing for surgery, and he probably talked himself out of it. I mean, you can do it. It can be done. I've seen it done. It's difficult to do in football. Not going to be easy. It really becomes a pain, kind of threshold pain management issue. There's really not any special brace or tape job or anything major you can do to make it better while you're out there on the field playing. You can treat it beforehand and afterwards to try and alleviate some of the soft tissue swelling and the pain. But the problem is these have a high rate of non-union, meaning they don't heal. And if you're playing through it, there's almost a complete 100% guarantee that it will not heal and that it's going to require surgery at some point. The question then becomes when? When do you bite the bullet and pull the trigger and get to surgery? And a lot of that could be determined by his performance on the field, which if it suffers, which it possibly could, trying to play through this, that could be sooner rather than later. Or if the Packers are doing well and he's able to play through it and be successful, they might hold off as long as they possibly can to see if the team has any playoff aspirations. And if he's a part of that, then they're probably going to let him go as long as he possibly can and wait till the end of the season or off season to fix it. But it's all going to come down to how he feels, what his pain management threshold is. And so what I foresee going forward is a lot of limited practice sessions, him popping up on the injury report every day throughout the weeks going forward until either they decide this is enough, let's fix it, or, the team is out of contention and then they say, no, you're done, and they shut him down. So it's going to be like this basically for as long as he continues to play.
So we're going to be talking about Jayden Reed every single week is basically what you're saying.
Pretty much he's going to be on there unless we have any major new updates or I see anything weird going on or something that I think maybe they're going to shut it down. It'll just be the same talk every week.
Okay. Well, I'll be sure to leave him off unless there's an update then.
I will say the first game that he plays will be telling.
Yes, 100%. And it doesn't necessarily look like it's going to be this week because he has not participated in practice as of yet.
It might not be. And, hey, maybe that's part of the plan. Maybe it's to see if we can actually get him ready by week 2. And then they may turn around and say, you know what? Forget it. He tried. It's not going to work. And they may actually make a determination then to have surgery and maybe put him on IR. But the fact that they didn't do it already is not good management because now you've taken a roster spot
from somebody else
who potentially they could have signed. You might have to elevate a practice squad player. It's going to be hard to find somebody through free agency now who's not already taken. So not good roster management on the part of the Packers if they're then going to turn around week 2 or something and say, sit him down, But again, his first game action is going to be telling because that's going to give you a clear insight as to how he's going to perform. It's probably only going to get worse as the season goes. It will not likely get better. Let's just put it that way. So if he has a good game, his first game out, it's probably going to get worse from there. So hopefully it's a great game.
Yeah, hopefully it is. It's not a situation where wear and tear is going to help us. It would help it. Yeah. But with that though, so I've been big on Matthew Golden being a powerhouse sleeper type of player that you could target later on in your drafts, going usually somewhere between the 8th to 10th round. I saw him go in the 7th in some drafts, but even this week, ECR's got him outside the top 36. I got him down at wide receiver 40. And I said this yesterday. I got him ranked at wide receiver 26 heading into this week. I think he's a must-play wide receiver 3, at least in your flex, if nothing else. It's a great matchup against Detroit. That could be a back-and-forth divisional rival shootout potentially, or at least a higher-scoring game potentially, with that being in Green Bay. He's going up against Terrion Arnold, who was awful last season. I know there's a lot of talk that he's playing much better now, but Arnold was the guy who was part of that secondary that led up the 5th most points to fantasy wide receivers a season ago. So it's a juicy matchup. Jayden Reed's probably not going to play. He already beat out Dontavian Wicks to be the starting perimeter wide receiver on the opposite side of Romeo Doubs. We know what Romeo Doubs is. He's a 600-700, 4-5 touchdown type of player. Great situational player, great little depth piece to have, a competent starter, but fantasy relevancy is limited. They have been desperate for a wide receiver that can take the top off. Christian Watson, there's a reason why we were big on Christian Watson in this offense, because of the big plays and the touchdowns. Well, guess what? Matthew Golden does both, and I think he's a better route runner than Christian Watson ever was, which makes him a little bit more dynamic and more of a chance that he could actually take on the role of being an alpha wide receiver, Jordan Love. Do not believe for a second when Matt LaFleur sits there and says, we don't need an alpha wide receiver. We're just going to pass around. We have a bunch bunch of good wide receivers. No. For an offense to properly function, they need a go-to weapon when the chips are down in situations where they need that guy to win his matchup. That's what they're looking for. That's what Matthew Golden has a chance to be. That's what I'm going to play him as, and he has the opportunity to do so with the Jaden Reed injury. Okay, so now let's talk about Stefon Diggs. This one has me just puzzled in my brain because we have a guy who's about to be 32, coming off an ACL, somehow miraculously is healthy and ready to go earlier than we ever expected. And I'm just waiting for Sunday to see, like, is it all a farce or is this actually Stefon Diggs? I don't know. From a medical standpoint, what do you make of this situation?
Well, I mean, it's not unheard of. He is a professional athlete, so he's been rehabbing for the last 10 months, basically since day one from the injury, which gives him an advantage over somebody from the general population. So 10 months is a reasonable time frame to return to full sport activity, competitive sport. A little early by NFL standards these days. Most guys, you're probably looking at closer to a year. But if it was a clean, isolated ACL injury with a very straightforward reconstruction that didn't go, that was uncomplicated with no major setbacks during his rehab, there's no shock in him being available and ready to go week one. I wouldn't have predicted it myself, given, like you said, his age and the injury itself, but that it's not unheard of. And what you have to remember, however, is that despite his being cleared and his readiness and him being active for week one, I don't expect to see Stefon Diggs of old quite yet. And that may not come to fruition until well into the season. Because as we talk about a lot with ACL reconstructions, it takes most players 18 to 24 months before they're kind of psychologically, physically feel like they've made a full recovery from this surgery and injury. So, and that pretty much goes across the board. And then as you factor age into it, it may even take a little longer. So even though he's going to be out there, I don't think he's going to be quite as agile and elusive as he may have been in the past. He'll be a target. He'll definitely make receptions, but I wouldn't expect the explosiveness that you may have seen from him in the past. I wouldn't expect him getting wide open on major routes down the field like you may have seen in the past, at least not for quite some time as we head into the season. And even then, it may be longer than that.
Okay, and that's kind of what I expected. Now, look, with Stefon Diggs, again, this is another guy you were taking probably towards the double-digit rounds, maybe the back end of the single-digit rounds in your drafts. And when you were drafting him, you were doing so, especially from a full-point PPR standpoint, that he could be maybe a wide receiver 3. He was somebody you could plug and play into your starting lineup to get a base floor, because the fact is, the Patriot wide receiver room, as much as I love Drake May, is awful. And we're waiting for somebody, and that guy is going to have to be Stefon Diggs. If anything, I think they're going to force targets to him, regardless, just because he's out there on the field. So if you have Stefon Diggs, I got him ranked at wide receiver 34 this week. Just I'm not expecting much upside outside of being a volume-based wide receiver 3. All right, so let's talk about those Bills. Khalil Shakir, ankle issue. How's he going to do on Sunday night?
I think he's going to do good. He's been dealing with this high ankle sprain for a while. It sounds like they treated it very cautiously and aggressively in his rehab. It was a high ankle sprain, don't forget, so these do tend to take a little bit longer. But it happened pretty early in the preseason. He's already been back to full participation in practice. He's been on track to play week one for a while now, and they're fully expecting him to be available. I see no reason why not. As far as I know, he's not had any setbacks. I expect him to be ready, and we should see him perform at a fairly high level.
All right, well, cool. And look, when it comes to the Buffalo wide receivers, it's still a wait and see. Shakir was the quote-unquote go-to guy, but it was a super spreader offense in every sense of the word. They brought in Josh Palmer again, or not, I shouldn't say again. They brought in Josh Palmer to add to this wide receiving core. On top of it, they just signed Gabe Davis. That's not going to mean anything, though. So you're looking at it, is Keon Coleman going to take a second step up, or is Khalil Shakir just going to continue to be the consistent guy that you can plug and play as a wide receiver 4 flex type in PPR only leagues? That's what we're looking to see. I do have Shakir in that wide receiver 4, potentially flex territory at the moment, PPR only, by the way, not half point PPR, not standard. But Keon Coleman is the one who has the upside. He's got the touchdown ability. He's got the big body. He's the one that that they spent the high draft capital on. He's the one I think they want to see become that guy. It's just a question of will it be? And we'll get to see some of that on Sunday. So Josh Downs hamstring, is he going to go?
Yeah, he's going to be ready. He was taken off the week 1 injury report, I think actually today, and practiced fully. He's been seen doing well at practice since he started practicing in full, and he's expected to play. He's been cleared, so I see no reason. Again, this was a guy who this happened quite a bit ago, and they've been taking it slow with his recovery, and I think that's the right thing to do.
Good news, because I got him as a low-end wide receiver 3 for PPR purposes as well. Even half-point PPR, I have him at wide receiver 36. I expect him to be the favorite target of Daniel Jones, who, Brian, as you know, as a Giants fan, loves to target the middle of the field short as much as he possibly can. So, yeah.
I got him on two teams. I've got him on two teams for that exact reason.
Yep. And I mean, look, is Daniel Jones the starting quarterback all year long? Who knows? We'll have to see. I do think he's going to have quite a bit of a leash, though, because the fact they didn't go Anthony Richardson tells me that Steichen is trying to coach for his job at the moment, and he's going to have to admit defeat if he makes that move. So I do expect this to last for at least a while, if not the entirety of the season. All right. So Juwan Jennings, he gets a contract bump. It was a $3 million deal based on playing time incentives. So he got a little extra money. He is back at practice. This calf issue, what do you make of it?
Well, after that contract, his calf's feeling a hell of a lot better. Hence, he's back on the practice field. They actually did an MRI as well, and that may have something to do with the contract, ironically, because that all happened around the same time. So they were probably like, well, if we're going to do this contract, let's check to see how bad your calf is with an MRI, and they did. And apparently they confirmed that he's good to go and healed up. So he's cleared. He's expected to play. Hopefully this won't be a lingering issue now that he's got his new contract in there with incentives to play. So, but I can guarantee you, I can almost guarantee you that is not a coincidence that he got that MRI before they redid that contract.
No, the timing makes perfect sense. If we're going to give you a little bit of a bump, we want to see if you're actually going to be healthy, especially when it's based on playing time incentive. Exactly. He probably wanted it for himself as well. Like, okay, how much am I actually going to be able to play in order to make this work? But with Juwan Jennings heading into week 1, from a fantasy standpoint, look, right now I have him kind of ranked in that low-end wide receiver 4 territory. Remember, it was the very first week of August. He has not practiced at all since then. Now, they do need him. He is going to be the other starting perimeter receiver across from Ricky Pearsall. Assuming Christian McCaffrey is good, and we do expect him to be if you missed the first part of the show, and George Kittle and Pearsall there are a lot of weapons for the 49ers to go to with Seattle. I don't know how much I want to play a guy who is still trying to prove that last year was not just a fluke when he's missed all of training camp regardless. So I think I'm going to let it ride one more week, see how he looks. If he looks good, then we're talking about Juwan Jennings as a wide receiver 3 heading into next week. If you had Ricky Pearsall, if you're going to play him this week, then continue to play him this week. I'm actually still aggressive on him because of the fact that Juwan Jennings hasn't been around, because Ricky Pearsall has been building up his chemistry with Brock Purdy. And we saw it even in the limited action preseason, that how much on the same page they were. It was like Purdy had only eyes for Pearsall. I don't think it'll go that way when McCaffrey and Kittle are both on the field, but Pearsall, and I said this before, he's going to run those Debo routes, those yards after catch designed routes in motion. Those are the X factors in the Shanahan system. Juwan Jennings going to play more of a Brandon Ayuk role, and while he's very good on third downs, I think it's a bit much to think that what we saw of Juwan last season in a 5th year with a guy who doesn't have a great physical explosive skill set is suddenly that caliber of wide receiver now. So I would play Pearsall. I bench Juwan Jennings for now. We'll come back again next week on that. Darnell Mooney dealing with a shoulder issue. Is he going to be good to go?
I hope so, because I got him on my team as well. He's dealing with a shoulder injury that he actually sustained last season, and I think he might have missed some time from that, but didn't require any offseason surgery or anything, and actually was doing very well. And then during camp, injured it again or aggravated it again. He missed some time and then was officially listed as day-to-day heading into week 1. It doesn't sound like he's going to be ready for week 1. That's almost certain, even though I don't think they've officially listed him as out. That might not happen until tomorrow, but hopefully we'll see him back in action relatively soon. I'm guessing at most maybe 2 weeks, hopefully not more. We don't really know the full extent of what the injury is, so it's a little hard to predict, but it sounds like it was probably a re-aggravation of something he had similar to last season, but not as bad.
Okay. Well, we expect him to be out there. We do want him out there because we want the defenses to not have to only key in on Drake London. That's basically what that boils down to me. With Darnell Mooney, if he's out there, though, in a game against Tampa Bay, this could be a shootout NFC South matchup. He's definitely in wide receiver 4 territory for me. Okay, so this one got interesting today. Christian Kirk, hamstring issue. Not sounding great.
Christian Kirk, he's been on my injury reports a lot over the last couple seasons.
True.
And this is a hamstring strain. And unfortunately, it did not happen early in camp. So that is a problem because this is when you run into the possibility of this lingering for several weeks. I think it's going to be at least 2 minimum. He's already likely unavailable for the week 1 home opener. And that's not unreasonable if this injury just kind of happened. So, hamstrings, like we talk about, have a high re-injury rate as high as like 20-something% within the first few weeks from when they had the original injury. So even if he feels good, sometimes that's not an end-all be-all. It still requires them to slowly work their way back into game action. So that's where a lot of the mistakes happen with recovery in this injury is guys feel good, they look good with initial stuff, but until you actually get on the field and perform game speed activities and game speed movements, you don't know what you got, and that's often how the re-injury occurs. So they should take this slow. I'm anticipating at least a 2-week absence.
That's what it sounds like from the reporting. Is it's going to be at least a 2-week absence, out this week, and then we'll see next week, but probably out next week too. This just means double down on Nico Collins. I know what everyone's thinking in their minds. Okay, Christian Kirk's out. And we talked about this, especially in dynasty time. If Kirk goes out, Jalen Noel comes in. Does he ever get to see his job back? Because Jalen Noel looks like one hell of an explosive slot wide receiver. There's a lot of debate right now what the depth chart for the Texans, even when Christian Kirk was expected to play, was even going to be. Like there's several debates amongst other unofficial depth charts out there whether Xavier Hutchinson or Jaden Higgins was going to be the third starting wide receiver, or if even they'll go with a bigger slot if Kirk is out instead of going Jalen Noel. So I'm a big fan of Jaden Higgins. I'm a big fan of Jalen Noel. I think their time will come, but there's too many things in flux that we just don't seem to know the answers to clearly. And it's week 1, so you should have other options. So to me, I'm looking at this like, look, double down on Nico Collins' value. Outside of that, I'm leaving it be. I'm going to see how this whole thing kind of plays out. Okay, so we got 2 tight ends to talk about. So Cade Otton, leg issue. What do you got there?
Yeah, from what I've seen, it sounds like it was probably some type of groin strain or some groin discomfort or soreness that limited him in practice earlier in the week. But apparently today he returned as a full participant, is going to return and has been cleared for week 1. In all likelihood, it was probably just some soreness. Groin injuries in football are not very common, not like in hockey and soccer where we see them more so. So I don't think it's anything serious. More than likely, probably just a little tweak or maybe some soreness that kept him on a limited sessions earlier in the week. But it sounds like he's good to go.
If you're playing, I don't have Cade Otton starting my top 12 of tight ends, but he's definitely a sleeper streaming option. And if you're playing DFS, I kind of like the guy. Remember when Chris Godwin was out, and I know they got Mika Ibuka, I know, but when Chris Godwin was out last year and Cade Otton was getting significant target share, he was a tight end you really wanted in your lineup last season. So even with Mika Ibuka there, it's still a tall task to say this rookie's just going to take over completely the target share that Chris Godwin was going to get right off the rip, and with Mike Evans there too. I think K-Dot gets sprinkled in. I just think he's an interesting name to keep in mind for some of those deeper leagues or some of those DFS leagues this week. Isaiah Likely, the foot issue. What do you got with him?
Yeah, so he broke a bone, and I'm not sure exactly which one. I haven't seen reports that specified. It doesn't necessarily matter. It sounds like it was a single fracture of a single bone, maybe one of the metatarsals. That's very common. And that happened about 4 weeks ago when he underwent surgery. So 4 weeks now, it's a little early to get him back into football action. He's getting close, though. I'm guessing possibly week 2 he could be ready, but maybe week 3. Definitely, I don't think he's going to be ready week 1. And I think they may have already confirmed that he's going to be out at least week 1. And I think that's legitimate. Foot fractures, not like other fractures in the body, depending on where it is. So 5 to 6 weeks, you can expect a full recovery. But by 4 weeks, you can start ramping up your activity if everything looks good and they anticipate full healing, which it sounds like they do. So I expect that he'll be doing some football activities heading into next week during practice sessions. He may or may not be ready week 2. We won't know that until the end of next week, depending on what he's able to get through at practice, but definitely out week 1.
Okay. That's great for Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is actually one of my top 5 tight ends, and everyone seemingly has fallen off of him. And I explained this during our best bust sleepers tight ends draft show. The accident, I think, had a lot to do with Mark Andrews' slow start. And what we saw last year, like Isaiah Likely, was that he came out hot week 1. After that, nowhere to be found, really, for the rest of the season. And Andrews took off. He started getting his touchdowns in the latter half. I think Mark Andrews is top 5 tight end. He's a must play this week. I got him in the top 5 heading into week 1, too. Without Isaiah Likely there, it's Zay Flowers and it's Mark Andrews. And please do not talk to me about DeAndre Hopkins. That is not going to be a target factor this season. With that, it's going to wrap up the show. Brian, as always, I want to thank you for coming on. I want you to tell everybody where to follow you at and what you got coming up next.
Yeah, so follow me on X at Injured List Pod. I should have put that down below, but I didn't. At Injured List Pod. That's where I do most of my updates throughout the season. If I get news updates myself, I'll pass some information along. I'll sometimes do a quick little synopsis of what's going on with the player. TSS Fantasy, Blonde Blitz, No Weddings in the Fall. You'll see me on a bunch of shows throughout the year on that sports podcast network, of which I am a member and founder. So please check us out. We've got a bunch of shows over there too that are quite entertaining. And of course, you'll see me with Dan every week. I love doing Dan's show. It's probably the most thorough injury breakdowns that I do anywhere. So this is, if you're going to watch one, this is definitely one to watch. If you're looking for more of an entertainment side of things, come check us out on TSS and at That Sports Podcast Network. And then I've been very slow with putting out my podcast episodes. I've got a lot of old stuff that's still worth listening to, where I interview players, former players, current players, and sports medicine professionals. So you can always check that out on my website, theinjuredlist.com, and my social media handles, which you can find all stuff linked there. So, but yeah, we'll be back next week, and this is it, man. We're here. Full swing.
We're here, baby.
Regular season. Hard to believe it flew by, but another year, another show.
Absolutely. I can't wait for all the weeks to come up. I will be back again tomorrow with Chaz Florey from Sports Betting Weekly to talk about our best bets for week 1, lining your pockets. Make sure you check out the playbook episode from yesterday if you have not already, to get you ready for your fantasy football matchups of week 1. And find me on the Huddle now. I'm dropping articles, weekly prop bets articles every single week. I dropped the futures article the other day to kind of get you guys ready for some values that are available there now before week 1 kicks off, and all those values go away because the books get smart after that. So make sure you check that out on the Huddle. Guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Everyone be good till then, and enjoy Thursday Night Football.